we just plow through it all, put the blinders on and just go. We don't slow down for trends or what's not hip anymore, we just stay true to ourselves. James Hetfield. A blinder is typically used by jockeys to keep a horse from going into sheer bloody panic. Horses don't like to race close to one another as they typically do. If they see a horse running alongside them, they try to avoid the other horse, often at the cost of lost time and distance to the jockey. Hence, blinders were invented to keep them only seeing what is directly in front of them. Blinders have since that day been used as a metaphor for totalitarianism, racism, ignorance, and many other negative connotations. With today's update, I'm going to ask fellow aspiring writers to consider when they should wear their blinders. Wait, what? Yes, wearing blinders can actually be a good thing and a bad thing depending on context. Just as with the racehorse, determination and drive can be as simple as having a fixed goal and not letting anything else get in the way or become a distraction. Today's modern society expects high efficiency from individuals within fixed amounts of time. History has, at its core, been interested in this, but more often in the quality over the time frame. Recent decades have changed that, mostly stemming from the invention of the assembly line and other assorted time-reducing creations. As a result, multitasking has become praised by many people. The upside is that a lot can be absorbed by certain individuals simultaneously in the same time it takes for another to do the same. The downside is most evident if you are not one of the individuals that multitasking comes natural to. Stress can increase from trying to essentially run too many processes at once. This in turn causes the brain to absorb at a slower rate to compensate for the sheer amount it does at once. Worse still, it's harder to keep track of the time spent, meaning some projects can take 2 to 3 hours when dealt with at the same time instead of taking 1 to 2 if they are done in serial instead of in parallel. Less than 1 out of 10 people is capable of multitasking effectively, and less than 3% worldwide are considered supertaskers, able to work more efficiently through multitasking than through concentrated methods. Chances are, you're more likely to be in the group that does worse when multitasking out of sheer probability. There's reason for this. Between the ages of 16 and 17, most of your brain's neural network has already been grown as efficient as it can run. Specific pathways linking memory to the senses and creativity are mostly in place. Some skills learned after the age of 18 tend to take twice or over 10 times as long to learn than if it started earlier. Simple tasks are an exception to this, usually. Once multitasking is thrown into the mix, context can get thrown out the window. The car you were going to repaint and the laundry you were going to sort out while watching the big game? Well, say hello to a sparkling lavender-scented car chassis and shirts so red that stoplights are jealous. Granted, this is an exaggeration, but the cause for the majority of car accidents? Multitasking. Even if you don't think you are. See, if your body is fighting off intoxication, it's trying to rid the poison you put in it, giving you a headache and other symptoms such as vomiting to convince you to not try that again, and whatever else you're doing at the same time, such as driving when you shouldn't be. The reverse side of all these considerations are the aforementioned supertaskers and others that multitasking comes natural to. The vast majority of these individuals are female, followed shortly after by those with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, also known as ADHD, something which I was diagnosed with during 5th grade. Now, not all individuals with ADHD are good multitaskers. In fact, it's usually those who are not diagnosed until later in their life that became good at it. One of the main reasons? Ritalin and like drugs. The main point of these drugs is to keep the brain from diverting its attention as rapidly, which in turn lessens the ability to switch from task to task quickly. The thing about ADHD is that most sufferers can focus and keep at a task for hours or at multiple at the same time if they are interested in it. If the task itself or another reward interests someone with ADHD enough, they can use their disorder to let their mind take brief segues into topics that might aid in their creative solutions to issues, but also rein in their thoughts back to the task at hand. In short, focusing on 2 or more things can take less time because they are considering multiple steps at once, much like someone planning chess moves out in advance for multiple pieces, not just the future moves of a single pawn that they push forward. For the majority of individuals, especially writers, multitasking should be anathema. It decreases focus on individual tasks for many and increases their stress. If you're lucky enough that it comes easily, it can help you vastly. Now, one area multitasking can help writers most is in their research. When one researches a subject, considering it from multiple angles, such as from different perspectives on a scene, they can get more accurate glimpses of the situation than if they only looked to one source or only one at a time, perhaps forgetting details from those earlier ones by the time they got near the end. Writing multiple things at once is near impossible due to the schism between ideas being too dissimilar and the whole bit of having only 2 hands at a time. However, writing one story and switching focus quickly to another is possible, even if it does mean less is done on each individual story. I have greatly overcome writer's block this way, still writing after being stuck with one story. On one hand, I probably will take longer for a single novel to be published, but on the other, I'll most likely have a second book or more almost ready before the first is even sent off to the publisher. The key to writing is not to follow what works for someone else. It's finding out what works for you. Some people multitask well, others do not. If you can multitask, find out what aids you most. I usually sip tea and possibly eat, listen to music, research, and type. Sometimes more may happen, sometimes less. That's just how I write. How you write may be completely different. A few suggestions to try out though. If you don't multitask well, clear your clutter within sight regularly, long before sitting down to write. If you don't, you might get distracted and work on that instead. Deal with as many bills or tense situations you can before writing, unless stress is your muse. There are a few authors who claim it is their own. This way your mind doesn't need to wander as much in the middle of your writing. Eat a bit before writing. If you get hungry, your mind might drift off to the land of cheeseburgers and fries. In addition, your brain needs sugar, in moderation of course, in order to function properly. If you do multitask well, find out what sharpens your focus the most while multitasking. For me, the aroma and taste of tea combined with music gets my mind sharp. A light amount of spice or sugar can aid as well by making my brain essentially capable of a short bit of overclocking. Use your multitasking for research the most, and use the research to make your stories as detailed and realistic as you feel is necessary. If you encounter a situation with writer's block, try using stream of consciousness, switching to work on another of your stories, or using prompts or other inspirations to get yourself to consider the current works in a new light. For those of you who are parents with children exhibiting ADHD symptoms, consider focus training instead of drugs. If a child has a mild enough case, they might overcome it on their own, with better multitasking skills or higher information absorption rates. If a child has a stronger case, if they can learn to focus, they might possibly end up becoming a supertasker, or at the least, capable of massive creative possibilities. Many theorize from descriptions that many of the great inventors, artists, and writers of the past may have had mild ADHD or symptoms similar caused by other circumstances.